Nah, are you ready? They probably would prefer it that way. Okay, welcome to the Provo City Planning Commission meeting. Today is the 27th of May, and it's 6 o'clock, and we will start with a roll call.
Matt Wheelwright, no conflicts.
John Lyons, no conflicts. Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts. We will have a pledge of allegiance offered by Mr. Gonzalez.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I am first going to read a message to you on decorum because this looks like a really rowdy crowd, so take note. This is a public hearing, but only the presenters and those invited by the commission may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on. When speaking, be sure to speak into the microphone up here so that the record is clear. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Please limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a side conversation, please step out of the chambers. Please do not attempt to interrupt or speak over others. Intimidating or threatening speech or behavior will not be tolerated at any time. Please refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, or being otherwise disruptive during the hearing. Okay, we will start with item number 1. Hold on a minute. Item number 1 is Provo Public Works requests a general plan amendment to update the wastewater collection master plan, which is Appendix G of the general plan. This has citywide application and will be presented by Lane Pierce. Lane Pierce is from the Public Works Department.
I work for the Public Works Department, Water Resources. So like you said, it's just an amendment to the general plan, and Andrew, our consultant from Bowling Collins, prepared a few short slides to briefly go over the wastewater master plan.
And if there's any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. This figure right here is an existing model result for the city's sewer collection system. The blue colors and lighter colors generally represent pipes with no concerns. And as you get to the darker colors, the yellow, red, and black, what you see is some areas of concern. Yellow is areas where the depth to the diameter of the flow in the pipe is starting to exceed 65%, which is kind of the city's level of service. So there's most of the system looks pretty good. There are a few areas of concern. Without improvements, you can see that there are quite a few pipes that actually move from yellow to red or black, which indicates that there are several areas that require improvements to not surcharge or exceed the city's level of service. This figure right here is demonstrating the approximate installation year of all of the collection system pipes in the city. So as you can see, the bluer pipes are kind of the newer pipes, with the age going to orange and yellow and red getting older. So the idea behind showing this figure is to identify sort of the approximate length of pipe that is starting to age. Generally, we start becoming concerned when pipes are 50 years or older. That's when the pipes become starting to see the need for replacement. And there's a significant portion of the pipe in the city that is starting to reach that age. So this graph right here demonstrates sort of the anticipated replacement time frame based on sort of that 75-year replacement window that we would normally look at. So you can see that in the year 2040, 2041, there's significant costs. Those are strictly based off of age. There's also several years in the next few years where there's significant costs that would be triggered just by age alone. The city's not using age alone for replacing pipes, but it is sort of a factor in evaluation. The city also has video inspection tools. They're able to go video pipes to assess the condition and determine when they need to be replaced. But the overall concept is that there are significant replacement and rehab costs that are coming up, and the city should budget accordingly. These projects are what have been identified as required projects based on growth in the city. The main changes from the last master plan, that there's a significant more pipes projects along University Avenue that popped up as a result of growth in the northeast area that has been recently annexed. And then this table here sort of identifies the project based on the project number, identifies the time frame for when those projects are needed, along with the total, and then kind of also identifies as anticipated system replacement costs on sort of third from the bottom, along with the treatment plant projects that are anticipated in the next 10 years or so. Any questions on the sewer master plan?
I have some. What are the major changes to the plan compared to the previous one?
As I mentioned, the northeast annexation area was the largest change from the previous master plan. So there was basically very little growth compared to the current sewer master plan, where densities in that area were essentially considered built out at the time, and the annexation area wasn't really considered as part of the previous collection system master plan. And then the other major change is also probably along the project P9 was previously proposed as a gravity collection main. That's been changed to be a force main, with the idea it's going to be pumped through a smaller diameter pipe rather than constructing a larger diameter gravity pipeline. Those are the major changes. Do you have any?
And P9 is driven by the west side of the freeway development.
Is that a more efficient or less efficient than the gravity design?
It's definitely less expensive, and it's you could say either way versus gravity or not. The through a force main, we sized the pumps previously for the master lift station out there, so we don't have to upsize pumps or anything. And you can put it at 4 to 5 feet deep, where most sewers are 12 to 13 feet deep, so it's a lot deeper.
Yeah, the cost impact for gravity is significantly higher than for force main. The trade-off is long-term, you are paying for the energy cost to pump a longer distance.
How about the costs in that that chart that you showed us, aside from the additional costs in the northeast that you weren't anticipating? Are those cost things that have already been on people's radar, or have those gone up, down?
The cost, well, all costs generally have gone up due to inflation. I would not say that they've gone up significantly since the last collection system master plan.
Yeah.
And do you feel like these plans address the concerns in the items 1 to 3 of the staff report that you listed? There's
what items? Oh, the three
the
bullet
points of
points that I
concern,
got,
the
yeah.
points to note that were listed there.
Yeah, we do feel that these plans address what's coming with
So-
Provo City and
Okay, so not major changes, just the consultant is just to assess how the plan that was previously there has met the needs and made any little tweaks that needed to be
yeah,
made to
and
it.
we've worked with planning to show densities and stuff has changed, and so we use the densities from them to do the the size of the pipes and the models and stuff like that.
Okay, I have one question that isn't necessarily related to approving or denying this, but it's for me to understand how the new wastewater system works. It says in the last line of the first paragraph, the city's new membrane bioreactor reclamation facility is rated at 21 million gallons per day with a hydraulic capacity of 16 million gallons per day. So why is the hydraulic capacity and the rating different? What does that mean?
There's a I think the order of that might have been a little swapped, but the hydraulic capacity is 21 MGD and the nutrient removal capacity is 16 MGD. And that's just based on, there's kind of different criteria for rating treatment plant components, because the overall plant capacity is 21 MGD, but there's certain components that would be rated for 16 MGD, and it's related to sort of a max month flow versus sort of an average month flow, so that generally the city's flows don't fluctuate significantly from month to month, but they can vary significantly like from like day to day in terms of like infiltration. So for example, like April flows could be significantly higher than August flows because of just infiltration in the system. So the treatment plant has to be able to pass those high April flows, but the treated amount, the amount of treatment from just the city connections is going to stay relatively the same. So the 16 MGD is more related to number of connections in the city, whereas the 21 MGD is more related to handling that sort of peak month of infiltration.
You telling me that they were switched answered my question, because I couldn't figure out why the capacity was lower than the rating. So perfect. I saw your hand.
Yeah, I had a question. So help me if I recall this correctly. When we annexed or we approved the annexation of those properties in the northeast section, I thought we asked about sewer capacity and we were identified that there was no problem. And now we find out that there actually is a problem or a future problem. Did we miss the question, or did I not get that correctly? Or
No, we've been working with planning on the annexation and stuff. And there isn't a problem with them being annexed. Well, I think one project, if I remember correctly, P24 that project has to be done, but it's not a large cost in it's, what is it, 800,000 or something like that. And we knew that the whole time. And Gordon's been telling the annexation people that the sewer is nearing capacity in that area. So we've known it the whole time. And he's correct, Gordon, you've been telling him the whole time.
So, Board Pay Public Works Director. So their impact fees are going to cover the cost of what these upgrades were needed. So if they didn't annex, they wouldn't pay the impact fees and the pipes would stay the same. They annex, their impact fees are now covering all these costs to upgrade these pipes. So we wanted to have a master plan to show that we're collecting impact fees from them that represent not only the cost for the treatment at the treatment plant, but also for the upgrading of the system along the way. And this will help us out a great deal.
and these are for all the new developments that have been presented for that northeast section now?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other areas in the city that we should be concerned about that are getting close to capacity? So if we look for additional growth there, something should be on our radar.
So this plan does show those other areas that need the additional upsizing.
Can you go to that map and just highlight them for me? I may have missed that.
So those are pipes that all need to be upsized, and based upon the timing is the growth in the area. And we've looked at that. So for example,
Is that blazing right now?
I don't know if I know how to use this, but
Yeah.
whoa, holy smokes. Okay. Wow. All right. So right now we have Irene, other developments out here. This sewer line is being extended this year to here. Eventually it's going to go clear up to here over the next 4 or 5 years in the plan. And that's all going to take place with their impact fees and the timing that they're doing the work. There's a whole bunch of development coming along here. The force main they talked about earlier will come along with that. There's changes in the mall. There's a potential rezone of about 1,400 units that so we've looked at every project you see that could possibly happen, and this will accomplish that goal.
Okay. Can you go to the dollars on the next slide then?
I better give that back. I shouldn't handle that.
So then will these costs that we're seeing, are these net of the impact fees, or the impact fees are part of this, or how does that work?
These are just straight capital costs. So we're not showing the revenue from impact fees in this specific table. This is just the overall dollar cost.
So will the revenues from the impact fees offset any of these costs?
So the answer to that's yes, but we're taking that to the city council. So some of these are existing deficiencies that impact fees cannot cover. Some of these are to add capacity for new development that impact fees. So none of these will be completely covered by impact fees, and most of these will have some portion of impact fees paying for those. And that, once this plan's adopted, we'll add this capital list and then determine the new impact fees for development. And that will be going to the city council with this plan.
So I'm guessing the previous plan didn't capture the cost of maintenance well enough. Do you feel like this plan does a better job of
So
realistically capturing those costs?
I think it did capture those, and there's just been changes and aging. And so because of interest and other kinds of things, we'll talk to the council about costs and so forth. But right now we're functioning well, but we'll talk to the council about rates in a future meeting, but that's probably later on in the year.
So is the intent of the impact fee to cover the additional cost of the new development inclusive of lifetime of maintenance, or just the installation costs?
Impact fees can only be charged for future growth
And no maintenance. So it's only to install.
Only for installation, okay.
So
and no maintenance costs. Yeah. And then that's one of the critical things in the Impact Fee Act, is that you cannot use impact fees for maintenance costs.
So this will just help us get the capacity in the pipe, and the rates that we charge will take care of the maintenance of that and the replacement. So.
Matthew?
So, excuse me, I think you just said that this is going to the city council to talk about rate increases, but item 3 here says 3B, I think this is about the master plan, discusses rate increases to fund future projects in order to maintain existing system. So can you help me understand what, in regards to rate increase, what are we actually voting on? Are we voting on that, or what's that
So
entail?
the master plan establishes your goals, right? So it's basically saying you have a plan to meet future growth. We need to build these different projects. And it also identifies as asset replacement costs. And so the goal of the master plan is just to establish like the goal or the target for the city. And then how you fund it may include impact fees, may include rate increases. Because as with it, all cost inflation is impacting the cost of all this replacement and rehabilitation projects. How you, whether you line a pipe or you replace that pipe is also affected by, it will affect those costs. So the master plan's intent is just to establish sort of the target. And then how you get there will be a combination of impact fees, taxes and revenue. So
We're not actually discussing or even voting on any rate.
You're not talking about any
impacts.
of the costs, just if the
Okay.
plan works. We've given you numbers to give ideas of things, but they're not pertinent to your purview. The council will do that. And it will be a number of months before we are ready to talk to them about that.
So is this table in the master plan, or is this just for our information?
this is in the master plan.
Okay,
So the master plan has all the things we want to do, all the
Okay.
costs. And it's not just impact fees or rates. We use our own crews to replace things. We go with UDOT when they do a road rehab, and we work with them to replace pipes at those times. We do it when we do overlay projects. We combine with other parts of the city utilities. So there's a myriad of ways that these numbers are covered, and each project is uniquely looked at.
okay. Can you explain to me what debt service expense? I think I know what that means, but those are huge numbers, so I'm not sure I know what that
So
means.
we just built the sewer treatment plant, and we now have bonded for it. So we're going to be paying for 20 years on debt to pay that off.
Okay. So that 63 million is mostly about the water treatment facility.
That's right.
Okay.
And you only bond because you can't pay for $70 million up front. So
And kind of on a positive note, this treatment plant is state of the art. We have built it in such a way that additional capacity could be added to it if additional regulations come down for more nutrients to be moved out of this. So this plant is very forward-looking, that as we need additional capacity, we get impact fees to expand it, but it's going to work for decades to come like it is. And we meet all regulations in our culinary water and our sewer water, kind of the same department. And we've had the award for the third best water in the United States in our culinary water. So we're going to try to do that with our sewer water as well, is to make it that great that we get an award for the best, least nutritional water going into Utah Lake and down the river. So that's what you're voting on here.
Danny?
I have to say this is out of my wheelhouse, so I'm not even sure what appropriate questions to ask. But when I look at the chart and I see it's like 40%, over 40% is of the infrastructure is over 40 years old or 50 years old, right? When I look at stuff built 1951 to 1970, 1931 to 1950, that's 40% of the entire thing. And so how does this plan address all of that? Because I see, like, you know, the map you showed where we're going to increase capacity, but you know, I think back to like last year, I think there was like a water main that broke on Center Street, and you hear about these things from time to time, and so to me, there seems to be a reluctance, or it's just easy to put infrastructure costs, just pass them on down to the next generation or to the next, just pass them on down to the next administration. So what does this plan do to address all of that?
I will say that let's see what's right. Wrong way. Let's see. Very good.
So let me just address that a little bit. Sewer is a lot different than water in that we are literally TVing every pipe in the city every couple of years. So he showed you that chart of the age, and that's a good first start. So we TV and watch those pipes right off from the start. Those get our first level of attention. The newer pipes, we're more confident, we don't watch as closely, but those we watch closely. And as we see that they start eroding or start deteriorating, then they start going on to a watch list, to a chart, and then we start putting those together for replacement. So age, we have some pipes that are really old that are performing outstanding. We have some really new pipes that should be doing better than they're doing. And so it's not, it would be nice if this was real easy, but it's a little bit art. And so these guys watch hours of video of sewer pipe. And again, the planning commission's welcome to come and join us with these. It's fascinating to see what goes down in these pipes. And so it's public. We get it to the public. And so anybody that wants to put this on Facebook. Anyway.
It's a tempting offer.
So we don't do that, but we're watching, we're looking, we're observing what's taking place. So we are staying on top of that. There's things that are happening all the time. We're replacing stuff.
We line them. We have a lining project.
Every year we're doing replacing and lining
We
projects.
sit down and we line.
Make sure you're talking to the mic.
We sit down and we look at videos, and then we, as a group, determine which lines we should put it's like a sock or a liner inside the ones that are deteriorating, and we fund, each year with budget process, we fund those projects. And the camera, like you said, is kind of the key, and then we can rehab them what's cost efficient.
So when Gordon says he TVs the line, he literally means he's watching it on TV.
There's a little camera that goes down.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure TV didn't stand for something else.
It doesn't.
Okay.
We have a TV camera that goes down, and I'm not watching it. So the royal eye, meaning
Yes.
other people, but I've seen it, so I know it's happening and I've watched it. But they do an outstanding job. We have a really outstanding public works department, particularly in the sewer department, that just is able to replace pipes, do all the maintenance. We go out there very carefully to make sure we are managing this system extraordinarily well. And it's a very conscientious group. So we're on top of our sewer pipes. In this plan, we should update every time you update the master plan to make sure we're there and look at the costs and make sure we're doing that. So that's why you're getting this plan at this time.
Seems like a great application for AI to watch those pipes.
There are some AI tools that are coming out. They're not quite there yet, but they're coming
There
out.
will be.
One thing that's not on this presentation is the amount of pipes that the city has already lined. As more of those pipes get lined, the pipes will get newer, but that's maybe not something that they have in this presentation that would be a feather in their hat. So
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Since the city is the applicant on this one, we'll go straight to public comment. And for public comment, are there any neighborhood district chairs here that would like to speak on this one? Okay, so anyone who would like to make a comment can come to the microphone, state your name and where you're from, and you have 2 minutes to say what you would like to say. All right, I see no public comment, so we'll close the hearing for public comment and we'll discuss this amongst the commissioners. I think it's amazing that more than half the pipes are over 50 years old.
It's amazing.
And also amazing that age isn't necessarily the reason they're bursting. So,
And we're no experts.
no. I love these plans that come to us because it shows me that the city's being proactive and they're checking things out and keeping tabs on them and they have them on their radar. So if you look at the numbers, it may freak you out, but I appreciate that they're not just waiting for something to explode before they do something about it.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that they're proactively looking, investigating visual. Yeah, age is not always the best indicator of when something's gonna fail. So they're on top of that and they line it. They're looking at the most cost effective. I'm in favor of approving this.
I'll just say, yeah, wastewater collection master plan. I think it's, I think the new reclamation facility is amazing. That's like something we can really be proud of. And especially as water seems to become more of a commodity and more scarce, that Provo's proactively looking to reclaim wastewater and find ways to put it back in the system. And we're very fortunate to have forward thinking on that.
I would just like to say, anytime I see somebody buying bottled water in Provo, I tell them about the statistics of Provo's water quality and how ridiculous it is to pay for water in Provo. They still buy bottled water, which I guess helps our tax base, but whatever. All right, do we have a motion or Matthew, do you?
Sorry, can I just make one other comment? It seems like it's not in our purview to talk about the rates, but I would suggest that we think hard or suggest, I'm not sure how to even say this, that the city council be more proactive than it feels like we've been in the last couple of years on the water rates to avoid big leaps in the future, that maybe we ought to do little shifts to knowing that this is accurate, right? Doing little shifts to keep up rather than surprising people.
I agree.
I just think that's a meaningful conversation that sounds like it's not quite in our purview to discuss. But I'm in favor of this. That's thoughtful. It addresses the things that our city needs.
So
Okay,
I'll make the motion.
all right, Mr. Lyons is gonna make a motion.
I make a motion that we forward a recommendation to the Provo City Council to adopt the wastewater collection master plan.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll start voting with Mr. Wheelwright.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I will vote aye. So 4 votes in favor of forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council. All right, item 2. Provo Public Works requests adoption of the storm drain master plan into the general plan, along with an associated impact fee facility plan. This has citywide application and will be presented by Carlos Garcia, also from Public Works.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. As you mentioned, my name is Carlos Garcia. I'm an engineer with Provo City Public Works in the Stormwater Division. And it's somewhat of a theme tonight, but we'll be introducing the update to the city's storm drain master plan. And it's been covered just now, but the plan, it will be our long-range roadmap for managing stormwater facilities. So it includes identifying existing system capacities, planning for future growth, and prioritizing improvements that help with reducing flood risk and protecting water quality. Joining me is Casey Schertz, our consultant from Hanson Island Luce. They've been the technical lead behind this update. He'll be walking us through some of the big changes, which includes recommended capital improvement projects and proposed impact fee changes. With that, I'll turn the time.
Okay, thank you. That works, yeah. There we go. Yeah, so we're talking about something maybe less exciting than wastewater. We're talking stormwater. I'm going to focus on kind of the changes from the prior plan to the plan that we've come up with now. And some of those biggest changes are kind of down in what this map is highlighting as the central business district. You're kind of west of University. We have some projects. A lot of the pipelines that run north to south end up taking a lot of water. There's a lot of drainage area that comes down through there. And so in order to solve some of those issues that were happening on the downstream side, we're basically siphoning off some of the water kind of midway through and taking it out to the Provo River, as opposed to upsizing all of those pipes that are already in the ground. And so you see there those pipes that are going on 300 north and 500 north, taking that water out and then eventually discharging into the Provo River. And so that's alleviating a lot of the pipes that are running north-south that go all the way down to Utah Lake. And so that was one of the things that was a big change from this plan. There's also development that's going to be happening with the new campus here for the I'm at loss for words, the medical at the old Provo High. And so we put in the plan for them to create some more detention, which is basically a temporary storage point for stormwater so that it can drain more slowly. It's kind of like a bathtub. It can fill up and drain slowly so the pipes don't have to be quite as big. And then there was another project down here where we're adding detention again at a school down here. Oops. At a school down here at Franklin, where we're adding some detention there because there's some existing piping that's too small that goes underneath the railroad. And so going under the railroads with storm drain pipes is very expensive. And so creating that temporary space for storage is a way to reduce those pipe sizes so that you can handle all that water that's coming there. And then the other big change was working over here on the west side of the city out by Utah Lake. There are some pump stations that are out there for stormwater out by the airport. And basically the big change here is just we kind of now know some known capacities of those pumps, meaning how much flow that they can actually pump out into the lake. And so basically we're planning on each of these areas and developments having enough detention so that they're releasing the correct amount of water so that the pumps can handle that when it gets there. And so those are kind of the main differences, I would say, from what we had on the prior plan. So a summary of the findings, we had a total of $76.8 million in capital improvements that were included in the master plan. Of that, $25.8 million was considered impact fee eligible costs. And again, we were utilizing detention as much as we could to reduce flows when it was feasible. Otherwise, if there was deficiencies in the system, we had to upsize some of those pipes so they could convey all the water that was coming to them. And so we worked very closely with the city staff, Carlos and Shane and Scott, and others to identify those areas that they actually see are having problems. Because we do our best with modeling, but the science of hydrology is a little bit inexact. We do our best to look at like how's it going to rain and how much water we're going to get. It's a very difficult thing to do. And so we do our best with all the textbook values and what we see in the field, but we tried to confirm whatever we put in the capital improvement plan list with your city staff that said, yes, we are seeing flooding at these locations before we put that on the capital improvement plan list. And then just kind of shifting into the impact fees, there are some changes to what we're proposing for the impact fee and how it's assessed. So an impact fee, you guys kind of touched on it earlier, but it's a one-time fee that's charged for the installation of whatever infrastructure is needed to service the future development, right? And so for that legal and planning framework, you need a technical analysis behind that, right? If you get called to question, you need to have this master plan. That's another reason to do a master plan, is so that you have the technical background to say, this is why we're putting what we're putting in the ground. And so that master plan can serve as that basis for that. And then historically, Provo City has charged stormwater impact fees based on gross acreage of development. And so this is one of the major changes, is a shift to charging the impact fees based on a stormwater ERU. And ERU is a phrase that's used a lot in master planning. It's used in drinking water, sewer. It stands for equivalent residential unit. And so you try to pare the impact down so that it's essentially like what would a typical residential unit be causing the system to take, right? And you use that to then apply that to other situations like commercial high density type stuff. And so in order to kind of illustrate how this changes things from an impact fee perspective, when you do a gross acreage approach, if you have these two different developments, one is going to be, you're going to have half an acre of impervious area. Think of a roadway, roof, something to where when the water hits it, it's not going to infiltrate, right? And then you've got another developer B is going to have big commercial, 90% impervious, big parking lot. Those two things, and from a stormwater perspective, have very different impacts. And so when you were doing the gross acreage approach, both developers would pay the exact same amount if they were developing 5 acres. In this stormwater ERU approach, based on the calculations we've done, that the fee per ERU is close to $1,500. And so if you look at those two examples and you look at how much impervious area there are, well, this developer A would pay much less in impact fees because he's impacting the system less. And then developer B would have a lot more impervious area, and so therefore they would pay more. At the end of the day, the goal of both of these approaches would be to collect the correct amount of money needed to service that future development, that $26 million that I alluded to earlier. The goal is to collect that same amount. These are kind of two extreme examples, but there's going to be a lot of in between as well. And at the end of the day, you're hoping to collect the right amount that's going to pay for that, whatever the future development needs. And so going back just to kind of show simply what the calculations show, we have about $25.8 million in total impact fee eligible costs. The planning related costs can also be impact fee eligible. We put that at $180,000. And the remaining ERUs from a stormwater perspective that we estimated that remain to be developed to build out is this 17,580. And so you can kind of see the simplistic calculation there. You just take that, add that total number up and divide it by the 17,580. And that's where you get the approximately $1,500 per ERU for a stormwater impact fee. As far as a comparison goes, the gross acreage stormwater impact fee currently is that $8,262.93. And so this change right here would take it to this $1,477 per ERU. So they're totally different approaches. And so that's why there's a drastic difference in the cost. But at the end of the day, the goal is to collect the right amount of water, or the right amount of money to service those. And so the future plan of the city, per my understanding, is that impact fees are going to be updated annually. And so by doing this, you're going to get more accurate project costs, and then you have a better chance to collect the right amount of money as you're updating these every year, as opposed to doing it every 5-10 years. You talked about a big increase. You don't want to do that, right? You want to kind of keep that as flat as you can, so that's only tracking that inflation, as opposed to making a change once every 10 years and you're under collecting and then you're trying to compensate. And that's what I have for now. Any questions?
Mr. Lyons.
So, right now, which are there areas of the city that face the highest stormwater risk right now?
Highest stormwater risk?
We have.
I don't think I
You
have
didn't
a
show
full-
them. You're right here, maybe.
full map, but I'm sure that Shane can probably speak to this, but there was quite a bit of flooding kind of as we got closer down to the lake through here with these north-south pipelines is where we saw a lot of the flooding. And then Shane can speak.
So we have two areas. So I'm the Public Services Director. One of the divisions I'm over is Stormwater. We have two areas that currently have the highest potential for flooding. The first area is, of course, up on the foothills. We get the high intensity rainstorm. That water comes off very quickly, very intense, very concentrated. And those areas we often can experience flooding up on the foothills. And that's problematic. It's not something we can deal with too much just because of the steep slopes. The second area is the old part of the city, and highlighted in blue, Franklin, pretty much anything south of BYU. Those areas have always been are problematic because when the city was built, a underground stormwater pipe network was never installed, right? It was done through deep curb and gutter. You're familiar with all that through the city. That does not convey stormwater very well. That was part of an irrigation / stormwater system. So over the last 30, 40 years, we've been slowly chipping away at that, getting rid of the deep curb and gutters as the stormwater system and putting in the pipe networks. So what you can see over here in that Franklin area, and in those blue areas, that's one of our biggest problem areas. And again, any part of the old town, we're still looking at putting in additional pipes, but these areas are the areas first that we realize, and that's really what we're focusing on right now, is those areas that are high in flooding. So it's those two areas.
And so slightly related, perhaps. The general plan is desirous that we do infill projects. And how are infill projects considered in this? Do they pay impact fees that we're talking about, or is there other considerations for that?
Yes. So any new development can, but there's an offset. So if they're already there, they're somewhat grandfathered in if they make a change. So there's a difference, right? If they increase the pervious area, then yes. But if they reduce the impervious area, meaning what they would contribute to the system, then no, they wouldn't pay an actual impact fee.
I would think most infills would probably.
Most infill projects, if it was just bare ground and then they're adding more hard surface, then yes, they would. But if it was already somewhat hard surface and we're changing that and not really changing the hard surface, then no.
So which one's those? Okay. Are there major projects that we need to do that are unfunded with this plan? Need or want to do?
Similar, as we were talking with wastewater, the impact fees only take care of development, right?
Right.
New future development. We have to use our fees, right, that generate through to take care of those capital replacement maintenance costs. I can always say, same with any of the utilities fees, there's always more to replace than there's available funding. And so we just tackle those areas and try to replace those, with stormwater, you get a hole in a pipe and all those things. It's actually can be beneficial at times. It's not like wastewater or our culinary water now stormwater is a little different. Some areas we actually want it to infiltrate into the ground. That's some of the design techniques that we do. So we actually benefit from that. So it's not as critical as wastewater or our culinary water. So
As long as you limit the flooding.
that is where we spend most of our maintenance and those projects, is where we can identify undersized pipe, where we can identify where we do have deficiencies when we get high intensity rain events. That's where we'll focus.
So do the levees along the Jordan River play into this at all?
The Provo River?
Yeah, the Provo River, excuse me.
So the levees in the Provo River are flood protection.
So it's not related to
Not
stormwater runoff?
necessarily. It is in the hydraulic sense when you get large rain events, of course, or the high snow years. It does play somewhat into our stormwater where because we have low-lying areas on the west, we actually have to shut off some of our stormwater. We have to shut things off that would gravity flow into the river. We have to put a valve, we stop it, and then we have to actually pump it to the river. So when we get high river flows, yes, it does play some impact to us, and that's usually every spring. But is conveyance of stormwater, I mean, that's really what the Provo is. It's conveyance of stormwater.
Right.
So-
We recognized recently that, I recognized recently that the federal government has declassified or downgraded our levies. Is there a
Yes.
plan to touch those at all or do anything with
Yes,
that?
and I want to go back. This has actually been going on since 1988.
Okay.
So we've been working through with the federal government and potential, all the changes, updating and mapping issues with the levees since 1988. In 84, 85, those levees were built in an emergency condition with Army Corps. They came in and quickly built those. At the time, there was no real hard standard on what the levee, the material, how it should be constructed, all those things. FEMA in 2016 solidified. They really came down and just said, we're gonna come in here and these are the standards across the whole United States. We're not gonna consider if you're in the east, west, wherever you're at, it's all the same. So that's challenging. But since they have really gotten a hard line on how the levees are to be constructed, our levees do not meet those standards now.
So we're just going to live with it the way it is. There's no plan to do anything
It
about it.
functions quite well. And FEMA actually recognizes we do get some reduction in our insurance costs because it is recognized with the new insurance program that they put out. There is some recognition that it does protect, but it has issues because it has vegetation. We have big tree roots that come through the levee. And so those can cause us problems. That it allows that infiltration of groundwater or the river flows through there. And we end up having to really make sure that we're maintaining those areas if they have issues. So, so far, the risk wise, from my personal opinion, is not very high. And the reason for that is because of the Jordan or the dam, the Jordanelle Dam. In 2023, if we did not have that dam, I am positive we'd have the similar flooding that we had in 1984. The amount of water that was coming down from the mountains in 2023 was at or exceeded 1984 up from the mountains. So because of that, the risk is actually significantly less.
Okay. Different question then. If we change to this ERU method for calculating impact fees, what's going to be the effect of that to the developers?
So it really shifts. So it helps more on the residential because residential is not as much impervious area.
Right.
Right. They're not creating as much hazards. And it's going to shift it more to commercial.
Okay.
Those areas that are putting in large parking lot areas, there's going to be an additional cost because you are creating a bigger impact to the system.
Okay.
Mr. Wheelwright?
Just to follow up on that, then, thinking of this, how does this compare to other cities around us? Because one of the risks, I guess you would say, is that if we're excited that a developer B is coming in to put in this commercial space, but they don't want to be here because it's much cheaper in the city next to us, how do we compare under this method? I like this method.
Yeah.
I understand the value of this method. I just want to understand how this
Yeah.
compares.
And your staff asked me the exact same question. And I would say in all the cities that I've looked at in this regard, I would say it's about a 70% stormwater ERU to maybe 30% gross acreage.
Do you work in Utah County? Like where are those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's a Utah County kind of
Utah
estimation.
County, Salt Lake County.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a question about how you determine those. Does every project need to have its own technical analysis for the ERU? Then are they gonna have to pay a consultant to do this, or is there a table that will say this is what applies to you? and
Yeah,
your
so there's a
acreage?
table that's going to say like 3,200 square feet is an ERU. And so when they submit plans and say our parking lot has 10,000 square feet, you just take that number and divide it by the square footage that's already been
Okay.
defined.
So they won't have to pay for a study that tells each
No.
project what to do. All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. We will now open to public comment, and our first public comment goes to any neighborhood district chairs that would like to speak. And then after that, any citizens, anyone in this room that would like to speak, you have 2 minutes. Tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Eileen Miller. I'm the Government Affairs Representative for the Utah Valley Home Builders Association. And I just want to say that this new system that uses the multispectral imagery analysis that does the impervious versus pervious is a game changer in the residential building industry because it's fair. And so we are very pleased. And my little committee that meets the first Wednesday of every month, this is one of the things that we tackled about a year ago. We invited third-party engineering firms to join our committee. And this was one of the new technologies that will make things more accurate and more fair. And we're very happy about it. So that's what we wanted to tell you.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of other things that are just as impactful coming through the pipeline through this little committee that we have. So I'll be back.
I liked your pipeline pun there. That was good. Thank you for sharing happy things with us. We appreciate your feedback. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Okay, we will close the public hearing portion and we as a commission will discuss this item.
Awful. It seems like they're approaching it the right way, similar to the last item. I guess I'll go on record again saying let's be sensitive to rates little by little to avoid.
Proactive.
Let's be proactive. Let's be thoughtful, looking to the now and the future and not kind of being penalized for being conservative.
I love the statement that the city plans to update their impact fees annually,
Agreed.
which tells me that they are thinking about it as well. I also like learning about the creative solutions that they had for problems to save money without losing safety, like the detention basins instead of building more lines and having the cross lines instead of all of the north-south lines. So
I would add from a developer standpoint, having the master plan well-defined, having those things in place means it's not this moving kind of target, ambiguous. The rules are clear, the impact fee is clear, you do the math and you come in with your project. So I like that.
any other discussion? Okay, anyone want to make a motion on item number 2?
I can do this one as well.
All right, Mr. Lyons.
I make a motion that we forward a recommendation to the Provo City Council to adopt the storm drain master plan.
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? I have a clarifying question. Is there already a storm drain master plan or is this the first one? The wording makes it look like this is new.
No, this is an update.
Okay,
So
similar to the wastewater plan.
yeah, the one we're updating was 2018.
I think you need to use the other mic.
This is an update.
Nope, that one's not working either.
I'll amend my motion.
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an update. It was 2018, was an update. This is our 2026 plan, so.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure we understood this was not something new that didn't exist.
So
I don't think you need to say anything different. I think what
Okay.
the motion covered that. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we are voting on forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council for approval of this.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I will also vote aye. So 4 votes in favor of forwarding item number 2 to the municipal council with a positive recommendation. All right, moving on to item 3. Dudley Associates requests project plan approval for an infill development project that includes 26 new residential units in the medium density residential zone located approximately at 258 West, 200 North in the Timp neighborhood. Mr. Wright from Development Services will be presenting this to us. I should note that this is an administrative decision, so the planning commission will not be forwarding a recommendation, but will be making a decision on this today.
All right, thank you. So let's the next slide. There we go. So this project came before you guys earlier on in the form of a concept plan and a rezone application to rezone the property to the medium density residential. Essentially what we're looking at on this one is the applicant is going to keep those existing homes that are along 300 West and 300 North. And then for the remaining part of the property, they would be doing some new infill residential development. So that would consist of 26 new apartment units going in around those existing homes. So here's their landscaping showing that they're providing the landscape required by code for the parking, for the park strips. They're providing the amenity space required by code, form of a playground, and also electric vehicle charging stations to get to the number required in our code for amenity space. And then there's some elevations here showing the different developments that they're proposing, 5-plexes and 4-plexes that we've kind of seen before. So it's kind of an overview of this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Lyons?
Yeah, so in my looking through this, it seems substantially the same as what we saw before. Were there any major changes that you saw that were implemented here? Is it substantially the same?
Yeah, it's essentially following that same concept plan we saw before, just cleaning up a few things, get more detail and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the same as the concept plan that we've seen before.
When you went through this, is there any concern about safety lights? It's an infill, so we don't have street lights there. Is that I couldn't tell, is that being properly taken care of?
Street lights and things like that.
In the back alley, if we call it that, will it be properly lit for safety?
Yeah, as far as parking lot lighting and things like that, there wasn't anything proposed in that regard. So
Does our code require or request for anything?
not that I'm aware of on something like this.
I just look at that as a full block. It could be quite dark back there. I just thinking in terms of occupant safety, I'd recommend if there's a way they could add lighting to that.
I think by code, there would be a light next to each exit door, garage door kind of area back there. So it probably won't be dark. It'll be,
If it's turned on by the occupant.
that's fair.
I'm just thinking of it's now like an apartment complex where you've got many people back there. I don't want to, I just think in terms of safety, is there a concern there? That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah, that could be something the applicant could address if they'd be willing to add some lighting back in there.
Okay.
Or if there already is, and
How is the drainage? We just talked about stormwater. How's the drainage issues going to be resolved back here?
I would leave that up to maybe Public Works to answer some of those questions. We've got David Day here that could respond to that one.
Why don't you come up now, Mr. Day? Tell us what the requirements are for drainage on a project like this.
So in single family homes, there's no requirement for detention. But in multifamily homes, there is. And so if you look in that, I think it's in that playground area, there is a
Detention basin.
a
Got it.
detention area. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
So
So-
does that just mean the grading will go towards that area?
So they have that planned into it. They're collecting the required amount of detention, and then they'll release it later on. So yeah, if you look at that square footage in that detention basin area, you can kind of read all that.
Any other questions for Mr. Day? While he's up,
I had another question for,
Mr. Wright?
yes, Mr. Wright. There's, what's the status of the development agreement with this?
Yeah, so there's the development agreement from the rezone, and that's just kind of going through Provo City's legal department to get that all finalized. So in the staff report, they mentioned that as a a condition if you're moving forward to approve it, that is still something that to have taken
Okay,
place.
thank you. So the question that I always wonder with these, I just need more education myself, is that if we actually approve these plans, what level of changes are they allowed to make into it? If we approve it this way, can they, what level of changes are they allowed? At what point would they need to come back to us? So if they say that, oh, we don't want 5 plexes, we want to do something different, for example, are they allowed to do that? Or would the development agreement require that they maintain it substantially as it is?
Yeah, the development agreement has that concept plan that's pretty comparable to what we're looking at here. It does limit them to 17 units per acre, which is what they're at. So if they were to change anything beyond that to increase, or if they desired to increase anything, that would have to come back and to get city council to amend the development agreement to do something like that.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Wright? Mr. Wright?
I'm not sure it's necessarily for you, but I'm trying to understand exactly. So like the new fourplex with garages, it says kind of just underneath the 2 existing homes. It looks like a duplex on site view. And when I look at the rest of the package, it's a little hard to interpret what's happening.
Yeah.
So are they basement entries?
Side by side.
Yeah, so there's stairways exterior to get down to the 2 units on the bottom. So
there's a basement unit and then a first, second floor unit. Is that what's
so
happening?
on the 4-plex, there'd be 2 upstairs and 2 downstairs. On the 5-plex, there'd be 3 upstairs and 2 downstairs.
Where are the
units.
garages for the downstairs units?
So they would be using that surface parking. So the upper units would each have garages, as you can see there, and then the lower units would use the surface parking stalls.
So when it says with garages, that's only for the upper ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I'm just trying to interpret what I'm looking at. So we have this green space between those 2 fourplexes with stairs, but the site plan almost makes it look like that's all depressed. Is it just a stairwell that's depressed, or is there?
Yeah, so you can see on the side here on the below grade.
So the grade is up and there's just a stairwell down to that door.
Stairwell to get down
Doorway.
to the lower unit. Yep.
I might recommend that be covered in some way. Those things are difficult when it's snowy and rainy down to those basements, but I get it now. Thank you.
I have a question about landscaping. All I see on the landscaping plan, besides the green colored area, is the trees. Is that all that's required, or is it just grass and trees? There's no other requirements for this type of development?
Yeah, as far as like shrubs and things like that, they would typically have those around the foundation of the homes.
But that's not a requirement. They're meeting the requirement if they just have a lawn and the trees, right?
Yeah, they can add those other elements. They could replace lawn with xeriscaping, things like that. But the main thing in that zone would be the trees and the pervious vegetation areas.
Is this a project that's big enough that it needed to have the points for amenities?
Yeah.
And
so
it met all those with the EV charging in the playground?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that shows they need 60. I think they're at 63 or something like that with those.
And are there any structural or aesthetic modifications being made to the existing homes, or are they just going in exactly as they are?
Be a good question for the applicant to, I think,
Okay.
at the last time at city council and probably at planning commission, they might have talked a little bit about some of the units doing some work. And so maybe
I imagine they have to like take them away from duplex status if they all have to be owner occupied single family, but I didn't know if that meant they were going to modify the exteriors at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Wright? All right. At this point, we can invite the applicant to come up. You have 15 minutes to make your presentation, and then we'll ask you questions if we have any at the end.
Do I get bonus points if I do it in a minute and a half?
Yes, we
All
clap for you.
We all get home earlier, right?
Mhm.
Corbin Church, Grandview Heights, Provo. To answer your question, first issue, the lighting. What I can do is I can put the lights on the garage on a light meter rather than have them operated by the homeowner so that there will be lighting in there. That's an easy fix. You discussed the landscaping. We provided for the city the minimum that was required for purposes of submission. When we go in and do it, we're going to make it a beautiful subdivision. So this is something that we're keeping, so it's going to be very nicely done. There will be more trees. The trees that we show are those that are required for approval. And the third question was these existing homes. The second home is already on the market. It's on the market for $600,000. That's a very steep increase from where it was because a major overhaul was done on it. The first home in the southwest corner there, that home is going through a major renovation right now, $250,000 renovation. There's a lot happening. That whole block is going to get a really nice upgrade. It's going to be nice.
Awesome. That's it.
Okay.
No, that
no.
was me clapping for your presentation.
I thought we were all going home.
No, don't get excited. Okay, we have some questions for the applicant.
So-
Mr. Wheelwright first.
I
No?
was just going to follow up on Mr. Wheelwright's request to cover the
Oh,
stairwells.
those are being covered. Yeah, with the snow and ice on those, they're very dangerous. So we'll cover those. Also prevents water from pooling down at the bottom.
Yep.
It's a good call. It's planned.
Do we need to say anything when we have these verbal agreements and clarifications with the plans to make sure those get included in inspections and things?
We'll put that in the ROA and we'll follow up on it when the building permits get issued.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Church? Mr. Wheelwright?
Just a comment that first, I'm still very excited that this way of approaching a neighborhood has continued, has taken off. So thank you for keeping with us and
The
keep working.
neighbors and the city have been great partners. We've been working with Bill and the neighbors in this process, and it's been great. It's going to be a great subdivision for everybody.
I would love to see this showcased as what infill can look like in some sort of PR. Obviously, let's wait and make sure it goes as fast as we can. But I think this is such a great example of, like you say, how people can work together to preserve and improve.
I think
What's
one of
already
your
great
other
about
questions,
Provo.
yeah, thanks. One of your other questions was the development agreement. I have already reviewed the development agreement. I've approved it. It's back in the city's hands. So we've made tremendous progress on that
Awesome.
without any changes. So
Thank you.
thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any neighborhood district leadership that would like to comment on this item? Okay, how about any members of the public that would like to come forward and make a comment on this item? We have a timid group today, or kind, polite, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we will close the public hearing portion of this item, and we will discuss this as commissioners.
It's that we're so intimidating. The four of us is what's happening. I just wanted to add to your previous comment, actually, that, yeah, it takes a lot of teamwork, but it also takes somebody or in that team a vision for a new way of thinking. This is unique in my mind to what we've seen, and I like it. But it took some vision and some thinking and going, how do we make this work? This is a better answer than raising the whole block or just status quoing it for the next 20 years. So I think this
Or
is
putting
great.
an apartment in the back.
Right.
Awesome. I just wanted to point out on page 2 of our staff report, in the bottom, it says setback requirements. And it says that what's required and what are proposed are not the same. But there is a something in the code that allows the director to modify those if they fit with the scale of the neighborhood. So I guess that's a shout out for the flexibility that still keeps the development nice and in line, but gives some of that wiggle room for appropriate development. So just in case somebody said, wait, it didn't meet that standard. According to that director's discretion, it does meet the standard. Okay.
I have just a couple of comments. I think I originally did not support this for the only reason being the ownership opportunities on some of these fourplexes. But I think there was broad neighborhood support because they saw it as a preservation win, right? The preservation of the existing homes that have been vacant. Oh yeah, my only comment really is that I'd love to see other we're praising this as a good model for infill development. And it's maybe due in part to the stomach the neighborhood has to support it, and just hope that other neighborhoods can have the same stomach to support infill development like this.
I think it's awesome. Awesome. Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
I'll continue the path. Yes,
Mr. Lyons is going crazy tonight.
that's right. Be still. I move that we approve the proposed project plan for the 26 new infill units at approximately 258 West, 200 North with the following conditions. First one, the development agreement associated with the rezone is recorded and that the plats that are under review by the CRC are recorded.
Thank you. That's our motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And then any discussion on that motion? All right, Mr. Wheeler, we'll start the voting with you.
Aye.
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 I will also vote aye. So 4 votes in favor of approving this infill development project. Moving on to item 4. Development Services requests ordinance text amendments to Provo City Code 14.37 to add a reduction for projects near bus rapid transit stations and to amend associated parking regulations. This will be presented by Mr. Ardmore.
Hey, thank you, Planning Commission. So this was talked about a couple times in study sessions, and now we're bringing it to you for recommendation to the City Council. I think it might be just the best practice to just kind of walk through each of these one by one and discuss kind of what's being proposed and what's being changed. So in our reduction in off-street parking, there's a few options currently in the code. You're familiar with those. You see them come through as TDMs and things like that. Producing additional bike parking is another way to reduce parking from city code. The proposal here is to add a new one, proximity to bus rapid transit station. With that, it'd be a by right, so long as you meet the criteria, reduction if you're within a quarter mile of a BRT station within the city. So there are some criteria there. No on-street parking, fronting the development, no single-family zones immediately adjacent. And then parking fees must be combined with rent. We've found through some study and some site visits that when a person is being charged for rent and being charged a separate fee for parking, they're not going to use the parking, and then they're parking on the street, and it doesn't solve the problem. So being able to couple those and being able to require that coupling if you want this reduction would help serve the purpose of providing and using the off-street parking spaces that would be provided with that development. We added number 5 there, subsection 5, just to make sure that people aren't combining different reductions in the code to get to a real small number. We didn't want that to happen. In 060, this is where all the different uses, not all the different uses, but a lot of different general uses are defined for what amount of parking needs to be provided for that use. towards the end of that, under residential, we have this batching singles section. This part that you see struck out is the Walking South Campus Planning Area. This is a term that's not in the general plan any longer. It's dated. It's not referenced in any adopted code or plans. So we moved to strike that, kind of simplify it in that second paragraph below. But the paragraph above that is providing even greater reduction for a batching apartment building if it's essentially adjacent to BYU campus. The idea there is that people wouldn't need a car, students wouldn't need a car because they're directly adjacent to campus and could walk to their classes. So that's the thinking behind those. And then 1437080, currently multifamily, single family, duplex, any type of residential use has to have its parking on site. Can't be on an adjacent parcel, can't be across the street, but commercial can. So in an effort to try to open up more of these areas that the city wants redeveloped, we took multiple family residential, so 4 to 5 units, apartments, condos, and put those in the category with commercial where you can park on an adjacent parcel. And then in C, it even opens up the opportunity to park not on an adjacent parcel, but on a separate parcel that could be across the street or within the same block, but not directly adjacent. And you can see there that's subject to certain criteria and being met, and different requirements from the applicant to satisfy being able to do that. So those are the proposed amendments to our parking code for your recommendation to the city council. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Lyons?
Shocking. As I read through this, I recognize we had covered many of these items in study sessions, but I started thinking about the situation where, is there any way we can require disclosure in marketing materials, disclosure when applicant signs, when anybody comes, so that it's very clear these are reduced parking apartments, and so to not expect to bring a car, or that they want, because I can imagine that scenarios where student wants to come to campus, finds the lowest cost one and doesn't think about the car. And so until they get there and after the fact, it becomes a problem. We don't want to make a worse problem than we already have. And so I was thinking, if we had some disclosure, it was obvious up front, clearly posted in their face, would there be a way we could do that?
It's an interesting question. Typically, we stay out of the management of private parking. It's a good idea. I just don't know how that could work logistically with staff getting into the management of private parking.
I think it's a good suggestion. Let us give it some thought and see if there's a way we can put that somewhere in the code.
Okay.
I mean, we have other places in the code where where the landlord has to disclose certain things to the renter, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
So to me, it would be along those same lines.
Yeah. We could try to find a place for that, John.
I want to jump on here because we've talked so much about parking and how they're not using the parking they have because they have to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. I actually feel like in this situation, it's disadvantageous to include the parking with the rent because right up front, there's not enough for everybody there. So it's already a subsidy. You already are asking 50% of the people who live there to subsidize somebody else's parking space. So I feel like in this situation where they don't have what code requires, that maybe it's not the right place to put this requirement. Because I would say yes on one of those larger projects where they have the right amount of parking for the right amount of beds, that you could expect that everybody is going to bring a car. And yes, you want to include it in the rent because that's the nature of that place and it's far enough away. But my thinking is still that the probability of somebody today coming to campus without a car is very low. It's not like it was 30 years ago. And so they may not drive it everywhere because they live next to the BRT station, but they have it there for other trips. And so I worry that if we require them to subsidize somebody else's parking space, that might backfire in this application.
I think the thinking on that, in a perfect world, there's two different rents, right? So person A comes to rent for my unit, for my apartment building. They want a parking space. They're going to be charged this amount. Person B acknowledges that they don't need a parking space, so they get charged a different amount.
But in that sense, are they really including it with the rent, or is it you're paying, you're paying for an apartment and a parking space?
Well, I think that's what Aaron is getting at. If we continue on your line of thought, how do we guarantee or encourage that all the on-site spaces actually get used? That's what we're
Right.
trying to.
Right, you want it, so it needs to be linked to a unit, but doesn't necessarily, the way I interpret that when I read it is that there's 50 units and all 50 of them have to pay the same rent because it's all linked in there.
I see.
Whereas we would say, if you could make the language represent what you're describing, which is that a certain number of units have a certain number of parking spots linked to them, and that's included with their rent, so they can't opt out of it. That would be, I think that would meet the intent of what we've talked about. But I worry about them being able to, I mean, it basically punishes the person who's trying to do what we're asking them to do, which is not bring a car because we've given you all the services. It sort of defeats the purpose of that transit-oriented development that we're trying to have around these transit nodes.
Yeah, it's a complicated subject. I mean, anytime we bring up parking, it's very it's very layered, right? But yeah, I think those are good notes. I think those are good ideas.
I have a couple more questions about language. And on page 5 of the staff report, it's 14.37.050 in the blue section 4A. So this is you can reduce it up to 50% when the following criteria are met. And A says there's no on-street parking on streets fronting the development. So can you give me an example of where that would be?
Park Plaza is 1/9.
Oh, okay,
Ninth
like we
north,
talked
ninth
about
east,
in the meeting.
The one that's looking to be rebuilt.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no on-street parking in front of that. There's several others, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
Do we want to make it have even more wiggle room where we can say in the areas surrounding the development? Because our concern with Park Plaza was that it was going to push people into the neighborhood because there wasn't any on the street. And so
that's where B kind of was trying to hit on that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. That covers that. Parking fee, we talked about that. The applicant's response on page 3, section F. The last line says they could also see a shift in behavior that could ease pressure to over-occupy and split existing single-family homes.
That tracks back to the whole kind of general purpose of proposing these amendments, is trying to get more new student development adjacent to campus.
Okay.
So that would therefore take pressure off
more of a bigger perspective.
The bigger radius. Yeah.
Okay. That's one of my big concerns was how tying it into rent would possibly backfire unless we word that carefully.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good note.
Any other questions for staff?
I'm thinking about what you just said about the way this, not just the way this is worded, but how we really want this to impact behavior. I actually think the right answer is just say no. I agree it's kind of a tragedy of the commons kind of issue, right? Everybody's paying for it, but that's the whole point. Let's just have everybody pay for it and then they'll stop acting the way they're acting now. So I actually don't think it's a problem that everybody pays the same rent, even though some have cars and some don't. I think that's the point to me, in my mind. Let them all just decide if there's, and then use the parking that's on site without thinking about, did I pay for that or did you pay for that? No, that's inconsequential. You chose to live here, you pay that rent, there's X number of parking spaces, make it work. In my mind, that's okay. What I do struggle with though is the way it's worded. Parking fees when used must be combined with rent. I'm not sure combined with rent is what we mean.
Included with rent?
Included with rent. I'm not sure I'm in love with what the intent. We understand the intent, but we've also sat in many meetings talking about it. If they come and ask you, you can explain it, but I'm not sure naturally that gives the message
Yeah, I
that we're
think-
trying to get
I think 4C
to.
can use some massaging.
I
Yeah.
think, that's what I think.
Yeah.
The other is, where did it go? Proximity to Brigham Young University. Any new multifamily or mixed-use development within 1/8 mile of BYU. I'm not sure I know what that means. BYU owns a lot of little properties scattered through. I'm not sure that's giving quite the right message. I know what you mean,
Main
but if I came up and
yeah.
I said, wait, BYU owns that corner of that neighborhood or block, that means within
That's a good catch.
that,
Yeah.
you understand?
I understand.
I think there's some
Also, we got the medical school
clarification.
that
Yeah.
has housing proposed down by it. So do we want to say by any
Is it primary campus? Do you
primary
need
campus?
do you need a
with
map?
Housing adjacent? Yeah,
Here's
or
the
something.
map.
We've seen BYU jump their traditional boundaries, like, you know, it used to be University Avenue and now they took over Provo High and all that. And then it used to be 900 East and now it's Wasatch School. So
I think
Yeah.
maybe you need an exhibit that defines, because I don't think you want this to apply around
The
Kiwanis
hospital.
Park
Right.
or something over on the other side of
Or the
9th
tree
East
streets.
or the tree streets at all.
You maybe need to include a map that gives, but the boundaries of what you speak of.
I think because this is not unlike a TOD kind of thing going on here. I know it's not quite, but in my mind, but Salt Lake had a problem. They had to map, say, this is what we mean. This dot, 1/8 of a mile, this dot, because it gets confusing and people start to abuse it. So I think
No, I think the simpler we can make it for everybody to understand, the better.
some
If they can look
clarification.
kind of like a flood map, if they can look at that and see whether that property falls within the boundary you've drawn.
Yeah.
Then there's no questions about what constitutes BYU.
Then somebody's not coming in here facing us and we're going, that's not what we meant.
Yeah.
That's a good point. BYU has, as you know, multiple parking lots on the south side of 800 North, and that's not what we mean.
Thank you. Good notes.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
We ask for 50% parking.
yeah. Otherwise, I'd say, good job. Like, I think this is progress. I'm excited that things are moving along. Good job, Aaron.
All right. Any other questions or comments for staff? All right. Staff is the applicant, so we'll go straight to public comment. Are there any neighborhood district leaders that would like to comment on this? All right. Any attendees that would like to comment on this? You have 2 minutes to make your comment and tell us your name and where you're from.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Walker Wood. I come from 610 North, 800 West in Centerville. I'm here representing the owner of Park Plaza. I am appreciative of the efforts being made to try to increase student housing next to campus. Obviously, I have a vested interest here and do think that this is good planning beyond just our individual project. Students who live across the street from campus use their cars and transit differently than those who are taking a shuttle or their car to get to school. We develop student housing around the country, and we've done no parking, we've done a quarter per bed, we've done a half stall per bed. And I do think this is a measured approach that addresses some of the more intense land uses that would benefit students by being able to walk across the street. Structured parking is at least double the cost of surface parking. So as we look at land right next to campus, I think it makes sense to house more students there, and that would generally require more intense land use and a higher cost to build the parking, which ultimately gets passed to the students. And I think this is a good way to try to address that. Just one note on some of the discussion here. We typically do charge separately for those who are bringing their vehicles. My belief is that those who are using it should pay for it disproportionately from those who do not bring their vehicle. So we'll certainly leave that up to you and we'll follow your lead there. But I would recommend that those who are using the parking are those same individuals that are paying the cost to maintain it and service it. So appreciate the thoughtfulness of the discussion and all of the different language that's been here. And Look forward to continue to work with you on trying to redevelop Park Plaza.
Are we allowed to ask any question?
Sure.
Okay. Let's wait till then. Any other public comments? Okay, I think Mr. Wheelwright has a question for you.
Sorry, remind me your name.
Walker.
Walker, thanks for being with us. So if, in the cases where you charge separate for parking, how do you ensure, have you found the magic sauce for how you ensure that the people actually who aren't paying aren't just parking on the city street or somewhere else? Because that's our frustration, right? Is that they're parking in the tree streets, or, you know, was what your people would do if they couldn't afford or didn't want to pay for a parking space. They're going to go park it somewhere. So have you experimented? Can you talk to us about how that might actually work?
Sure. We've looked into at other student housing developments, including in the lease itself, that you are not bringing a car unless you're parking it on site. The enforcement of that gets challenging, but we actually haven't found, when we've done that, that there are those who are abusing it. So that doesn't mean it's a foolproof way to make sure that there aren't any. And so it really comes down to enforcement. We can certainly commit to including that when we're signing leases, saying, if you are bringing a vehicle, you must pay for parking and park it here and not off-site. The enforcement of that and how we would understand if one of our residents is indeed parking and walking would be a challenge. But I think that also would discourage those who may be thinking of doing so.
Do you have any other properties around BYU?
Not directly around campus, no.
How about UVU? Do you have any other properties in the
Salt Lake
state?
City, yeah, we're doing 0.27 per bed community that's on the first track stop off of campus in Salt Lake City.
What's the name of it?
Chapter Salt Lake City.
But it's under construction?
It's under construction right now.
So you don't have anything existing to test? Because if you don't have anything like every student's different, every student body acts a little different.
Not in Utah, yeah. There's we've partnered with a group and are doing 7 different projects. University of Oregon, University of Michigan, University of Clemson are the most 3 recent, and those are all 2 of those have 0 parking stalls and are right next to campus, and the other is a quarter per bed. So it's different because Provo is different than every other municipality. We fully appreciate that. The demand for cars, to the point made earlier, traditionally when students are bringing vehicles, they're not using them to get to campus. They're using them to go home. They're using them to do weekend trips. That's why we think the half stall per bed is sufficient to address those that are bringing vehicles for ancillary uses that are not kind of daily trips.
Thank you. So can I ask a follow-up question to Bill? So, or Aaron or whoever, like, it's the same kind of question about how do you market? How do we put something, if we were to trust the management, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, right? Because the management would have already fixed this. But it's such a rampant problem, that's why we're talking about this approach. Is that accurate? Is that?
So, yeah, management can be the key. Brennan Rulon was supposed to be here tonight. He owns Campus Plaza it's very underparked according to any standard we've had for the last 15 years, and we've never had a parking complaint on that. And it's completely up to the management. In some of these other cases, we've tried to legislate that by the conditions Aaron has put on there. In the case of Park Plaza, you can park on 900 East. The closest residential street is 820 North. And you'd have to go quite a ways east on 820 North before you'd start affecting single family homes. I don't think people would park down there to walk up to live in Park Plaza. So we've tried to put conditions to help safeguard in those cases where we can't just trust that every owner is going to manage it the way we would like them to.
So with the words that are in here, if it was adjacent to a neighborhood, they wouldn't even be allowed to request the difference. the 50% reduction?
Yeah, that's what that B is meant to say.
Okay.
4B. We're trying to keep them from impacting single-family neighborhoods.
So even if they're close to BYU, if there's still single family use, that property wouldn't be able to ask for the parking reduction. Okay. Yeah, that's the BRT. Thank you. I have a question about the BRT. I was thinking about it. Why are the 1/4 mile radius, why is that set for the BRT distance? And yet for BYU, there's 1/8 and 1/4. Like, shouldn't we make it the same ruling?
I think you have two different demographics there. I think the BRT isn't just students. I think it's all sorts of people, and most people that ride BRT are willing to do a 5-minute walk. I think students is a different demographic and have a different way of going about. So that might have not been the best explanation, but in the end, I think you're dealing with two different demographics.
I'm just wondering if we should make the circle smaller around BRT, because the people that are riding the BRT are willing to make the 5-minute walk, but not everybody within a 1/4 mile is a BRT rider. Therefore, they could get away with not having the same standards apply and have no intention of taking public transportation. Like, we've made it more enticing because it can be more affordable and they'll just park somewhere else.
True.
I just want to raise that as like a potential backfire of the 1/4 mile around the BRT.
I think it goes back to implementing the station area plans, trying to get those areas to redevelop per the adopted plans. I think this is trying to be an incentive for that to occur.
Because it doesn't apply to what's there already. It only applies to new development.
New development.
Okay. Did you want to see the maps again?
I want to see the maps again. I had a question on the BRTs themselves. Are they, I don't know even how to answer this, but are they effective? Are because they're built there, are we seeing more people relying upon them? We're moving away from a car dependent society, or is that just?
Those are questions I can't answer. I don't have
so
data on that.
the question, the 1/2 mile from, you look at these maps, those are, I don't know. I just wonder, is it really effective? Are really doing what we intend to do? If there's only the bus and it's limited where you can go. I mean, it feels like.
I'd be happy to look into some ridership numbers and get that back to you during a study session or something.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it's certainly consistent with the station area plan legislation that the state has just made us follow. It's the same thinking.
And it clearly is where it took a little while, but in Salt Lake, they worked. It just took a little while for everybody to get comfortable and a few developers to get out of the way because they were abusing a little bit. But I think the strategy works in Utah and beyond.
I might lean towards a bigger radius might be better.
Really?
Yeah.
Just.
I don't know. I just think about,
everyone
I
gets
think about
50% parking
when I
reduction?
use public transportation and how much I'm willing to walk. And when I'm using it, it's more.
Agreed.
When I'm
Agreed.
when
However,
I'm dependent on it, I'm willing to walk more.
But it's both ends.
it's both ends. It's the opposite direction that I worry about. I wish there was a BRT within a mile of my house, but that's not the case. But everyone who lives within a 1/4 mile of a BRT is not a transit user, but is going to be able to not provide parking at the same rate just because they live where they live.
I also think population's changing. I mean, the next generation is quite different than the four of us, honestly, right? Their focus on things, their intentions are different. Utah's different, Utah County's different, the Salt Lake County is different to California. Like, there are lots of moving parts. I say we go for this because it's in line with other things that we're seeing. I'm inclined to support maybe some tweaking on the wording, the parking fee being just included with the rent, flat rate. The developers will figure it out how to charge so that it balances out in the long run. And let's see how it goes a little bit. We amend things all the time. I'm inclined to say that the thoughts are sound, the strategy's sound. It's very thoughtful. let's test it. We've got good partners in the area that are willing to help us, and let's roll the dice a little bit.
I agree. And by me pointing these things out, I'm not in any way saying that I don't like this idea. I just want to make sure we've thought through it enough that we haven't left holes that someone's going to take advantage of it in ways contrary to what we're hoping to get. So I guess my inclination would be to move it forward because it does meet the state legislation requirements to build around the BRTs and to have plans for them. And we've written the plans and this meets the plans and we're just trying to put it into effect. But I would say before the municipal council makes a decision that they should look at data on the BRT ridership just to make sure that it's headed in the right direction. And I think the important thing would be to compare the data from when BRT was free for everybody to when they had to start paying. Because if we look at data from 2 years ago, I think it might be different than now when you actually have to pay to ride it. Because you can't just jump on and off at, willy-nilly. So make sure that the data they look at shows the actual ridership of paid people who are riding. And that would include anyone who's a university student who can ride it for free because they're paid riders. And then I like the idea of maybe finding some way we can suggest that language go into the contracts that if it doesn't enforce it, at least it educates it and gives the intent of this housing is provided for people who aren't dependent on cars. So we expect you not to bring a car if you've told us you don't have one. I don't know, some way we can, those would be my two things to cover the holes I worry about opening up.
The other part there, I agree with you there, Lisa. I like the wording that was recommended, that something to the effect of in the lease, if you are bringing a vehicle, you must park it here and you must pay for parking. Something like that. Whether how well it's enforced or not, I think you step with announcing it and communicating it.
Right. I think that's the education aspect is, I feel like 90% of the problems we have could be addressed with people actually knowing what the rules are.
I think so.
And yeah, they're not going to read it in their contract, and yeah, they'll do whatever they can to not pay the fee, but at least the expectation is laid out. It's better than no expectation.
And I also think we should update I resonate with what Matt said, provide a map and define the boundaries for the 1/8 mile from BYU. Exactly what does that mean? So it's not left open to interpretation.
We could even take out the 1/8 and 1/4 and just say according to the map. Because then that gives us room to get rid of those parking lots that are currently owned by BYU or whatever else. Just kind of like a floodplain map where this is the map of where the parking reduction applies. And we can amend the map. Maybe the verbiage has to say approximately 1/8 for this circle, approximately 1/4 for this, but that takes a lot of room for user interpretation out of the equation. So we can just make those do we all like those recommendations about contracts talking about don't bring your car and the map being the descriptor instead of just.
I like the language in the contract, but I still like this language as let's see how it goes, how new developers respond, and maybe some of the old ones will follow suit and get some of those cars off the streets and use their own parking.
How do we feel about the idea of recommending that city council looks at ridership data before they make a decision? Does that matter to anyone besides me?
Even though I mentioned it, I'm thinking that this is to help push it in that direction. The results may not be there yet, but this type of policy facilitates that to happen. The more that these new developments are created with reduced parking, the more people will be required to get to do some other way. So this, even though it may not be working today, maybe this is what we need to have in place so that it will work.
Well, part of the kind of marketing aspect that Bill's going to look at with Aaron and others is to say, hey, let's educate on that. Ridership's going up. Let's change the vision of riding the bus and public transit. If kids now are excited about braces and putting colorful bands on, then there's hope. Because I hated my braces and never thought they were cool, and now they're cool. We need something to move the needle on the bus line, and I think I agree.
Needle on the bus goes round. All right. Danny, did I hear you?
I was just gonna say it's I like to consider myself young, but like we're so out of touch with, I mean, I can only observe like anecdotally, like when I pass by the BRT, like most of the riders are young. They're under the age of, to me, it looks like under the age of 30, maybe under the age of 25, but it seems pretty full, but like I don't have a clue of insight into like what the younger demographics are doing in car ownership now versus what it was 20 years ago.
And I honestly worry that if the universities stopped giving transit passes to their students, that the ridership would almost disappear. Because that's a huge incentive for me, because I can ride public transit for free. I will do it more often than not because it's paid for. But if I had to drop a couple dollars every time, I would think twice. And so that's something for the municipal council to consider when they talk about making these permanent changes, that we would, I mean, maybe like have that on our radar, like if the ridership ever changes because it's not subsidized anymore, we might want to remove these. But at that point, we would already have places on the ground with no parking. So anyway. It would be very easy for ridership numbers to change significantly in the middle of this PR effort, just with that one thing. So anyway, I feel like we've discussed this sufficiently. Does somebody want to make a motion about what we should do?
I have some notes, so.
All right, Mr. Lyons is gonna take it.
All right. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed text amendments. Am I on the right one? Not on the right one.
Here you are.
No, you are.
Yeah.
You would just say you would recommend.
Okay, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed text amendments to the City Council with these additional findings, recommendations. One, that there's disclosure requirements for reduced parking projects. Number two, that there be a map created and define boundaries for where the reduced parking applies. Right now it says 1/8 mile from BYU, but that be defined properly. Three, that there be the updated wording on item 4C for parking fees per the discussion we had. And item 4, that they consider adding to contracts a note that says if they are bringing a vehicle, they must park it there and pay for parking. And item 5 is that City Council consider long-term effects of BRT ridership, making these permanent.
So before we get a second on that, I would just clarify that all of those things that were listed are recommendations that we would include with our recommendation to the municipal council for them to consider, that have no.
And the planning and preparation for that
They have no legal bearing on our recommendation, but they're things that we've discussed that we care about.
So I might back off. A map might be a right answer, but there could be other ways of defining the distance from BYU and what BYU means in that. So however this Aaron, Bill, others decide is the best way to define that.
So map and or define boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. And so let me just restate then that the motion was to forward a positive recommendation. And then we included several other recommendations to consider.
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Mr. Will. Oh, any discussion on the motion? Okay, Mr. Will, we'll start the voting with you.
Aye.
Aye.
And I will also vote aye. So all 4 of us voting in favor of item 4 being advanced to the municipal council with a positive recommendation. Item number 5, Development Services requests an ordinance text amendment to Provo City Code 15.24.030 to amend the area requirement for agricultural protection areas. This has a citywide application and will be presented by Jessica Danke.
Thank you. Yes, we're bringing another ordinance text amendment to you this evening for the agricultural protection area requirement. Kind of implied in the name, an agricultural protection area is just an area that's been designated with additional protections due to its agricultural use. Currently, our code requires that there are 5 acres of land be part of the agricultural protection area. We're proposing to bring that down to 1 acre. This is because the smallest lot size allowed in our agricultural zone is 1 acre, so that has them lining up. We're also proposing to remove the requirement that they be receiving the Farmland Assessment Act or the Greenbelt tax benefits. I have a few additional slides just about agricultural protection areas, if you'd like some more context for that, or if you
Yes.
feel that this, okay. So the state sets a majority of the criteria for what an agricultural protection area has to be. It's these 5 criteria here that the area is actively used as agriculture, and the state also gives us a definition for what that is. The area is zoned for agricultural use. The area is actually viable to have agricultural use. If there will be any improvements, what are those improvements going to be? And then future trends, if agricultural will remain viable there over time. So those are the state criteria. And then lastly is just the benefits that the state have put for, if you get an agricultural protection, these are the additional protections that you have now that you're in this protection area. So again, our recommendation is just bringing it down from 5 acres of land as the area requirement to 1 acre, and then removing that requirement to be receiving Greenbelt benefits. Are there any questions for me?
Mr. Wellwright first.
This list is interesting because I know something about why zoning exists in the first place, right? Euclidean zoning. And now I'm wondering, I was totally in favor, but now I just have this question about, do I want all of these to be protections for a 1 acre agricultural site the same way I would for a 5 acre agricultural site? Because if it's a 1 acre, they're not doing it for profit, probably. I mean, there's just probably not enough volume coming out of that to matter much or to be a way of providing livelihood. But they could do some nuisance things that would really bother me, but now they're protected at 1 acre, whereas a 5 acre that probably is viable at some other thing. And now I feel maybe differently. Any thoughts on that? I'm just wrestling now with that as I think about those protections.
Part of the definition for the state is that there is a reasonable expectation of profit. So we in the city have not actually had an agricultural protection area come through. We do have a few people who are interested in pursuing it. So we haven't handled it firsthand yet. But that being said, there does have to be a reasonable expectation of profit. The application goes to City Council for a recommendation to be heard by you, and then also the County Agricultural Board. Both you as the Planning Commission and the County Agricultural Board will then make your own separate recommendations that go back to City Council for a final approval.
That does help. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you studied how many parcels still exist in Provo that might fall under this? I mean, I can think of a couple, maybe. Do we think this is a huge deal?
Don't think we're going to see a lot. And I think the ones that we will see will be slightly larger than just 1 acre. I don't know off the top of my head how many 1 acre parcels we have that would have a reasonable expectation of profit for one of these listed agricultural uses. Yeah.
I guess my questions are along those same lines. Sure feels like 1 acre, we're opening it for either some of the nuisance opportunities or for a hobby or some way to, so I had questions, why we want to do this now? This is effort to do. I wasn't seeing a real benefit for the city for doing this. Second question is why remove the Greenbelt tax associated with it?
Right. The reason that we're doing this now is ties back into a previous annexation, the Smith annexation. They came into the city. They are currently in an agricultural protection with the county. But in 20 years' time, if they would want to renew it through the city, they could. They don't meet the 5-acre requirement. But additionally, as I said, it's to match our agricultural zoning with the area requirement to be in an agricultural protection. That Smith annexation just kind of brought that disjoint to a head, that conflict, I should say.
How big is that property?
They have 2.9 acres.
And then why the disassociated with the Greenbelt tax?
Right. The Greenbelt tax requires, according to state code, it requires 5 continuous acres. Monday, I was at the Agricultural Commission meeting or Agricultural Committee meeting. One of the members said that it had actually been brought down to 2 acres. I have not seen that reflected in the written state code, so I don't know if that is accurate. But they're saying that that is what the county has changed it to.
So then on the it seems to me that I'm trying to think, 1 acre seems small, like a hobbyist expectation of profit. Does that mean if I sell if it's just a yard for chickens and I sell a couple eggs, is that considered profit, or does it have to be true profit over existing costs? How is that controlled? Because it feels to me like this could just be a simple way a hobbyist could come in and take care of something and not really receive all the agriculture protections that we want true agriculture to have.
Right. So the state does not actually include what their definition of a reasonable expectation of profit would be. So I don't really have a good answer for you for that specific question. That is something I can look further into.
Okay, I have some questions. The Farmland Assessment Act, in what ways is that useful? Is it just as a tax benefit?
Tax benefit, yep.
Okay. And if we make these changes, do those 5 state criteria for what makes an agricultural land still apply?
Yes.
Another question. Does a 5-acre site have setbacks required? So let's say there's a 5-acre site that's in agricultural protection right now. Do they just get to do whatever they want because they're an agricultural property? Or if they abut a residential property, do they have to? I'm speaking because there's an agricultural use in my neighborhood that has goats that smell so bad I can smell them half a mile away.
Right.
And they are right behind somebody's house. So the people who live there must be dry heaving all day. And I'm just wondering if we really want, what protections are there for somebody who says, I want to, they have goats, maybe they already have rights to have that.
Yeah.
What if they wanted to increase their profit for whatever they're doing with said stinky animals? And how do we protect the other existing uses that are around this area that now wants to receive additional protections for what they're doing?
Right. The agricultural protection area, my understanding is that it will not supersede any of our zoning requirements. So with like where they're putting their shed for their goats, I believe in our agricultural zone, there is a required setback for that. Like it can't be directly on the property line. This agricultural protection area doesn't give them free rein to ignore the zoning standards of our agricultural zone. So those are kind of the standards that we would see them develop to for adding any additional animals or.
Can you go to the slide before this one that said what the agricultural definitions were? There was a slide that before this one. Nope, it was after, sorry. The protection from nuisance lawsuits. So this says nobody can complain about how it smells in number 1.
Right. We can't do that, but they can't if, for example, our agricultural code does limit how many livestock you have based on the size of your lot. they can't then say, well, I'm in an agricultural area, so even though I only have a 1 acre lot, I'm actually going to have 500 horses here. Like,
Okay. So we can't control whether those horses go right up to the fence to stink up the neighborhood or whether they stay in the middle, but we can control how many of them there are.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is set up to protect that agricultural use from residential encroachment.
Right,
But historically, that's been the problem, not
right,
that a farm moves into the middle of a neighborhood.
right.
It's the other way around.
But allowing a 1 acre might change.
Yeah, I feel like making it smaller means you could have more of these. But if they already have to be in agricultural use,
Right.
that's where I feel like it addresses your concern about it being smaller. It's not like someone saying, here's an empty field, I want to turn it into a farm. It's, here's my farm. I don't want someone to turn it into a neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't see how going from 5 to 1 acres is going to affect that. Yes, I don't see how going from 5 acres to 1 acre is going to help with the city in that regard.
Well, it does just allow like this current one that's in the wings saying, I want mine to be protected. I don't want someone to complain about my use, maybe.
But is this something that the residents would be applying for? So they're not just granted APA as a matter of right. They have to
yes, it
apply
has
for
to
it.
go through the
At which
approval
point
process.
We would go
Wouldn't-
through all the criteria and talk
and
about
we'd
each
say,
point.
no, you guys, I don't know. I guess there's some concerns that like, it's almost as if you'd want to have a development agreement on that, like that their use won't change. Like, so if they go from raising cabbage to raising mink and goats, a change of use or intensity of use, would be to me like something you'd want to
Right.
have.
As part of the application process, I've been working with the county. As I mentioned, we haven't had an agricultural protection area come through at the city level. So I've gotten the documentations in the application from the county, and it does, as part of the application process, say, what use do you have at your property
Yeah,
that
what's
you're
the current
applying to
use?
protect? So that information would be provided as part of that application and review process.
I would suggest maybe we can discuss this further, but one idea that would address maybe some of our concerns is to find out for sure if what you were told at that ag meeting is correct
Yeah.
and is shown in state code, to align our size with what they define as an agricultural area.
Mhm.
And that sounds like that would also meet the needs of the application in the wings.
Right. Just point of clarification, it's for the green belt.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just feel like even
Yeah.
though that's not required, if that's kind of a number that's out there that measures agricultural spaces, it might be useful to use it as a standard.
Right. I'll double check that. Like, as I mentioned, as of today, what's written and published online still says 5 acres. So I'll make sure that just hasn't been changed, but not updated.
I mean, it's definitely a finding that we're doing the 1 acre because 1 acre is our residential agricultural size.
I'm reading this and I'm trying to think of loopholes, and I'm looking at like, what if a farming operation decides to host a concert and then they're shielded from complaints about noise?
No, only if it's their farming operation noise. I don't think it shields them
Yeah.
from every. Plus also, I think they wouldn't be allowed to do that without some sort of special permit. Just like the other farm that tried to do wedding venues, they weren't just allowed to do that outright. They had to get permission.
Right, and I think it ended up being an overlay zone where
Right.
there was.
But it wasn't just that they
additional
could just
uses
schedule it for Friday and do it,
regulated.
you know?
Okay.
Lots of oversight was on that one. Mr. Willwright.
So just to confirm, that has to be an existing agricultural use that applies for this, right?
Yes, the area has to be zoned agriculture, and there needs to be an agricultural use.
Okay. Well, that actually makes me feel a lot better about what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's not just gonna pop up in the middle of the
Right.
neighborhood.
The second is so is it 1 acre of land that's farmed or agriculture of some kind, or can they also put their house and their ADU on it and still farm?
This would just be, there has to be a total of 1 acre of land. It doesn't just have to be 1 acre of farm. So if they do have their house and their ADU, those are allowed in our agricultural zone. So that would still be.
Those aren't.
They are.
They are.
They are, right. Okay.
So then just to clarify that, if I were on my 1.1 acre lot, hypothetically,
Yeah.
I have my house and my ADU and my 6 chickens, and I sell, and it's already zoned for agriculture, and I sell eggs to the neighbors, I meet all the criteria.
Well, correction. You don't rezone for agriculture. You're already
No,
zoned
it's
for
already zoned.
agriculture,
It's already-
and you just ask for a protection area.
And I want to be protected now, and that's what I'm doing. And then tomorrow I change those chickens for goats. That would all be fine. There would be no issue with that, and I can do that. Now, my neighbors are expecting my chickens. Now they see goats and they don't like the downstream smell. They can say nothing because now I'm protected.
Well, in the application, you are listing what your use is that's being protected. But outside of that, if goats are allowed in an agricultural zone, you could switch them out regardless of if you're in a protection area or not.
But if you're in the protection area, you're locked into the use you got the protection for.
Yeah.
So it's actually more restrictive in that sense.
So, but my protections for farm animals, I just changed the farm animal mix.
That would be one way if you list off multiple different farm animals on there that you'll be raising chickens, goats, cattle. Again, that's where it's going to look to our base zoning of what we allow in the agricultural area based on your lot size.
Yeah, I just feel that 1 acre it's not time for a comment. I know it's questions.
No, I think that what she said is that with or without the agricultural protection area, you could upgrade the goats. So you could find a way to wiggle your way to having that in your agricultural protection area, but it was already allowed by the zoning.
No, but with this, we give protection, so now I'm protected where before I wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. All right. This is another city application, so we've already heard from the applicant. If there are any neighborhood district representatives here that would like to come up and comment, you have 3 minutes to do so. Okay. I don't see anyone. And then anyone else in attendance that would like to come make a public comment, you have 2 minutes for your comment. Okay. Seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing and we will discuss as commissioners on the motion we would like to make.
I think maybe we're making a little more out of this than it needs to.
Yeah, I think this is just a cleanup.
This is a cleanup.
We can trust that it will enforce itself because you can't really introduce a new use. It has to already be a use. Someone is already used to that.
And it's not like it's everywhere in the city. There are a handful of pockets where it still happens and could happen. And we want those. That's why this exists. We want orchards. We want some of that. We want to be able to walk our kids past the fence that has the horses behind it. Like I think I'm in favor, even though there's a little risk, but the risk exists now and this doesn't really change that. It maybe even makes it better because there's some steps to go through if you want this that you have to prove.
It's kind of like a conditional use permit in a sense. We give you protections for your
But you have to
use
prove.
that you want to have that you said it was going to be this.
Right. And you have to prove and you have to show it's profitable and all those things. Otherwise you won't get the protections.
Yeah, and you can probably tell the way I feel about this is that those protections already exist for those areas and they're fine. I don't see the need to change it from 5 to 1 to reduce it to encourage additional use that we're not already seeing today.
I can see that view very strongly.
So
I would ask that staff look into whether it's useful to align the size with that other greenbelt standard just for simplicity's sake, but
But since we're separating from the greenbelt anyway, I understand your point. If you wanted to take it from 5 to 3, I think 3 acres is a reasonable size. And I think it gets what we're wanting to do, but 1 acre, I've owned property of 1 acre and 3 acres before. I know how big they are and what you can do. And to give those agricultural protections doesn't feel like the right intent for the city right now for me.
okay.
The other way that you could address that is if in this text amendment, it wasn't just the 1 acre, but if it was an assembly of parcels that was 3 to
If the
5,
agricultural land, yeah, something like that.
that actually could,
Where people came in as a joint.
right. So
Yeah,
we want the
problem with-
protections on
The problem with that is
these.
that if somebody decides they want to sell their land, does that then mean that everybody else is out of luck because it's no
Yeah.
longer big enough? You know, it means that
Yeah, that's fair.
if you don't have it all as one. Anyway, these are just ideas that definitely you could pass along to the municipal council, whether we vote in favor or against, for them to discuss. All right, have we discussed enough we're ready to make a motion? Mr. Gonzalez, did you want to make a motion? You seemed
No,
excited.
I think we need to give Commissioner Lyons the home run.
You won't like my motion.
Hey, we can
So-
vote yay or nay.
So if you want me to, I will recommend denial.
Okay.
So,
Let me just say, when you recommend denial, if you could give us some findings, just so that we know why.
okay, see if I can do that. I move that the planning commission recommends denial of the proposed ordinance text amendment of Provo City Code 15.24.030 to the city council because the 1 acre, reducing from 5 acres to 1 acres is too drastic a reduction, and that the 1 acre is the entire lot, and it's possible to have to have a lot of 1 acre that only a little bit would be for agricultural use. It's too easy to, anyway, not sure that there's a reason to add the additional protections to those such small hobby farms.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
If I plan to vote nay on that motion, does it make sense for me to second?
Nope.
Does not.
So it sounds like the motion is going to die right here on the floor.
Can I make a different motion then?
You may.
I move that the planning commission recommends approval of the proposed ordinance text amendment, Provo City Code 15.24.030 to the city council, maybe with the notes that we've discussed, including that 1 acre, 2 acre, maybe there's a different consideration, but that I don't think this is that big of an issue. So I
Okay.
offer that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, and then I want to discuss a little bit on the motion. I think I need some education on why we need to why we're encouraged to have agricultural protection zones. Why isn't it just sufficient to for I understand there's like pressures from outside and stuff, but why couldn't a agricultural landowner just say no and just keep doing what they're doing? For me, this is like an ignorance thing.
You want
anyways.
Mr. Pepperoni to educate you on the
If- well,
necessity of a protection
if
area?
not now, then in a study session or some other time.
Okay.
That was a some other time not, I think.
Well, in the case of the application waiting in the wings, first of all, it's an orchardist. So a lot of the fears that you've voiced are very real scenarios. But in this case of this specific application, they're orchardists. So many of those livestock things don't really apply. The reason why it's becoming sensitive to the Smiths is you saw just 2 weeks ago, a huge hillside development
Eating
that's
up
going to
the
bring
land.
housing right into their neighborhood. So they're trying to get out ahead of that and just say, we want to make sure we put it on record that we were here first and we're protected. If you look at a community like Lehigh, they have a long history of the subdivisions moving into the ag lands and putting enough pressure on the ag lands that they push the ag uses out because they make life so miserable on the farm owner by continual complaints to the city, that it ends up pushing out the agriculture.
Like in the form of nuisance complaints?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So this is just an effort to try to circumvent that, to keep that from happening. Jessica talked about the agricultural committee. We do have an active agricultural committee in this city. They are encouraging more farmers, especially on the west side, to consider putting their land into protection areas to preserve agriculture going forward. So I think you're going to see more of these coming up. I think the tool is going to get used.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And it also helps me to feel more comfortable with the motion because it needing to be a current use really will provide protection in and of itself and prevent them from getting squeezed out by things that came here after them. So I
So
appreciate
those are all
that.
good things, right? So as we talked about the potential for abuse, is that real or is that just something in the back of my head? I've felt that in other locations. I've seen people abuse agricultural protections for their hobby farms and other kinds of things, and it causes a problem for the neighborhood in the areas where it's at. And that's what I'm reacting against because I don't want it to go down that path.
Yeah, and then like I kind of understand where he's coming from on that. And for me, it's like the part that concerns me is if there's a change in agricultural use, the one that was relied upon at the time of application, and then it changes, 5, 10, 20 years down the road into something that's was not bargained for. And so
That feels like something like a conditional use permit though, where
That's what
if
I'm
it
saying.
changes, there's protections for the city to
That's what
say
I'm
this
saying.
isn't okay.
And I don't know if we have that with this.
I
That's
don't know
all.
if we do either.
I would just to kind of address that concern a little bit. These are valid for 20 years. Every 20 years, they have to come back and renew their agricultural protection. So if a change did happen, they would have to say, well, we've switched out our chickens and now we're raising dairy cattle. They would have to get that change reviewed and there would have to be a new
But that
approval.
would have to happen before 20 years. If they change out their chickens at 5 years, they would have to come back to the city or the county and say, we
No,
need
they
to
don't.
reevaluate our.
I mean, what if they change it in year 1 and then they live out the rest of the 19 years doing the more annoying use?
Right. If they listed on their application, we'll be raising chickens and dairy cattle and have an orchard. Then if they change it within those 20 years at the 20-year mark, they don't have to get a renewal because it was a part of their application. But if it was listed as part of their application, city council, the planning commission, and the county agricultural board has had the opportunity to review that and see if they feel like that's suitable for their protection area.
Could they change it if they weren't already doing that? Like he was saying, if they had chickens and then they decided goats were more profitable, could they change their farm to a different one? If it had to already be that use, you know what I mean?
Right. So like if it's just in the agricultural zone and it's not got any protections on there, agricultural use or standard land use 8200, anything listed in there, which goats are listed, they could switch those out regardless of the protection or not. If they have the protection and they didn't list that they also wanted to be doing dairy products in addition to their chickens and their orchard, then they do have to come back.
What's the enforcement for that?
That would predominantly be either complaint-based, it would predominantly be complaint-based. I don't believe, at least citywide, we have the staff power to be following up yearly on agricultural protection areas. I also don't think that people who are using this for their agricultural purposes are going to overhaul their entire production and profit model at the drop of a hat or consistently be changing.
And what establishes the 20-year mark?
That's a state requirement.
That's a state. Okay.
Just reapply.
Well, I was just wondering if we could make it 10 years. A lot's going to change in the next 20 years. We have no idea how the next 20 years is really going to go.
Yeah, but what she just said was that it's more restrictive to have the agricultural protection on because you're limited to what you said you were going to do instead of whatever the zoning.
So it's adding
allows.
more restrictions.
But it might only really come up at 20 years. If we could say it was 10 years, then at least every 10 years, they're getting a review
Yeah, but if they're not causing a problem, a review isn't really necessary. If they're causing a problem, it'll come up in 2 years
Because of
because somebody will complain.
Yeah.
I think the reality is here is we're
Knows.
talking a lot about this. This exists because as a city, as a state, we want more agriculture. Like people value protecting the agriculture. So yes, it could get abused, but there are avenues to address that if it is getting abused. So
And anyone,
my motion
since
stands.
nobody has applied for it, that says that,
Yeah.
it's not getting abused currently.
True.
And you have the review process. All right, let me bring us back because we do have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
The motion is to forward this with a positive recommendation to the municipal council. It has been seconded. We've had a lively discussion. I'm going to send it out for a vote and then we'll move forward from there. Mr. Wheelwright.
Aye.
Can't change our mind. Aye.
Ooh,
Look at that.
No.
okay. And I will vote aye. Now, my question is, we have to have 4 in order for it to pass. So does it just mean it gets continued till we have more people? Or it goes forward as a denial?
Goes forward with a negative recommendation.
Okay. But they'll hear all the discussion and they can still do whatever they want from that. So 3 votes in favor, 1 vote against forwarding positive recommendation. Therefore, this item number 5 moves on to the municipal council with a negative recommendation.
Yeah, and the only comment on that, my no vote, is that I'd like to see something more in the form of a conditional use type thing where it's can be regulated year to year rather than 20-year intervals.
Okay, so Mr. Gonzalez's concerns are mainly with the time.
The
And
20-year term.
the 20-year term, yeah. And how often someone's going to look at it and make sure the rules are being followed, I think is implied in that.
And my change of heart was recognizing that protecting agriculture use is probably a higher purpose than the nuisance for neighbors. So.
Especially since it can't be introduced. That's the real thing for me, is
Since it
it?
can't be into
If it already stinks,
clarification.
they already know what they bought into.
Yeah,
Okay.
the clarification was very helpful.
I agree. All right. Ooh. Should we save this for the next one? New chair and vice chair, 2 of us aren't going to be here. I would make a motion that item 6 be continued to the next agenda when we have more commissioners. So, does anyone?
Second.
Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is that the last one? That was a surprise one. I wasn't ready for that. I know.
I move to adjourn.
All in
Seconded.
favor? Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Well done, friends.
Change my mind or get it.